Hey, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Thank you very much. Oh, good afternoon. Welcome in. This is the Joe Gaither Show. I just did a great 15 seconds on mute. My man Jacob Bain hanging out with me, helping me out, unmuting my microphone. This is the Joe Gaither Show on Cowbell Corner, part of the Mississippi State on SI. We appreciate everybody who's watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, or Twitter, checking us out at Joe Gaither 6, or checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We are here with our friend Jacob Bain, our correspondent for Cowbell Corner, for CowbellCountry, Mississippi State on SI. How's your week going, Jacob?
It's going good. Woke up this morning and got a deep dive into the EA Sports Dynasty mode, and so I was really excited to watch that this morning whenever I got up.
Well, are you? Do you have big plans for 4th of July? It's 4th of July week. Are you gonna shoot off a bunch of fireworks this week?
I don't think so. I mean, I might go to my grandparents, but that's about it.
Well, make sure you keep all 5 fingers and toes on every hand. Stay away from the ignition if you can.
Yeah, I don't want to be like Jason Pierre-Paul, lose a couple fingers.
Yeah, you're going to need those fingers if you're going to dominate that EA Sports College Football 25. What'd you see out of Dynasty mode today? Anything look interesting to you?
It looked back in the day, or NCAA 14 recruiting was just kind of just a basic. You allot certain points to certain guys every week, but it's a whole in-depth thing. You can DM them on social media. You can set up a visit, just text them, and they got the transfer portal stuff. They can commit and decommit, and they got both the signing days now. So I guess during that video, I realized how much has changed in the past 10 years in college football.
Well, I hope that you, in your own dynasty, are able to sign all 5 stars. All 5 stars all the time. Nobody decommits. But be careful. Don't commit any NCAA violations, Jacob.
Oh, I'm kind of curious to see if they'll have something like that. Like you can do NIL and all kinds of stuff with them now. So I was kind of curious if you could violate.
Well, let's talk about some news in real life in the SEC and news as it pertains to Mississippi State. We've been teasing or dancing around it. We all knew it was coming. But on Sunday night, Monday morning, midnight on Sunday, Texas and Oklahoma are officially a part of the conference. What is your reaction to those 2 big brands jumping in and joining the league?
It's very exciting to me. Just if you think about all sports, Texas baseball is really well. Obviously, football is a big brand. Oklahoma baseball has been good the past few years. Football, their softball is really good, and I don't know. I think the best conference in the best conference in the country just picked up 2 of the biggest brands in college football. So it's very exciting, and I'm ready to see the matchup this year.
I'm excited about it too. Obviously, from the Mississippi State perspective, Mississippi State is going to Texas to play football this year, but they'll eventually end up on a home and home with Oklahoma as well, 2 years down the line. What's the fan reaction in Starkville? Because I'm seeing a lot on my social media of, we don't want you, Texas, Oklahoma. Y'all don't belong, Texas, Oklahoma. You're too arrogant, Texas. You don't fit in. What's your social media? What's the Mississippi State fans' kind of reaction to these big old brands coming into the league?
I think they're kind of neutral, and I really haven't had many run-ins with either one of their fan bases yet. But if I had to guess, I would say they're pretty low on the totem pole of aggravating fan bases in the SEC. And I won't name some of them I can think of on the top of my head. But
why not?
The old SEC West, you got Auburn, LSU, the entire SEC West. Their fan bases are there's something else. But maybe Texas and Oklahoma are worse, but I just can't see how they'll be any worse than what we already have.
Well, one connection that you pointed out to me before we got going is Vic Schaefer over at Texas. Former Mississippi State women's basketball coach, led them to 2 national championship games, but now is leading the program in Texas. How will it be to have your former coach in the conference, and what's the competition level going to be? Will the Mississippi State fans give him a warm welcome when he gets back to when they end up playing in Starkville, or will it be kind of, you left us after taking us almost to the promised land?
I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. If I was more of a fan, I would tend to lean more toward not being very happy he's back, just because I mean he did a lot for the program, but he did leave, so I mean I don't know. I don't know how the fans react. If I had to guess, they'll probably cheer for him. But it's interesting. Texas, if they as long as they have Vic Schaefer, they're going to be really good. But I'm not sure what the reception will be like. If it was me personally, I don't know if it would be a warm reception.
All right, and so we got to watch a lot of this past week of Texas and Texas A&M from the baseball perspective, losing Schlossnagle, going from A&M to Texas, and we know that Mississippi State baseball is very, very prideful and has a lot of has a lot to cheer about. What's the baseball going to look like? Because Mississippi State, they started off a little poorly this year and then got back into form. What's the baseball landscape going to be like? Because I think everybody talks about football, and that's obviously the king. And not to be disrespectful to Mississippi State, but the program is a little bit is going to fall down 2 rungs, at least on the football ladder in the SEC, because of Texas and Oklahoma joining. Baseball, on the other hand, has a chance baseball can compete with anybody in the conference, and baseball is one of the upper echelon programs in the conference. Is there any concern about, oh gosh, you're welcoming Oklahoma and particularly Texas into a league that's already really, really deep and really, really good?
Oh yeah, Oklahoma. I would say they're probably have the least tradition out of them in Texas. But the past few years under their head coach Skip Johnson, I think they've been in national seed 2 straight years. When Ole Miss won the national title, that they beat Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has been on the rise as a baseball program, but Texas is arguably the best college baseball program ever. Them and LSU have a claim for that, but it'll be definitely interesting. SEC football gets all the praise for how deep and dominant they are and which they are, but baseball, I would argue, is more dominant than football. I mean, the past 5 national champions have been from the SEC, and it's been 5 different schools: Vandy, State, Ole Miss, LSU, now Tennessee, and 3 straight years, or no, it might be 4 straight years. It's been 2 straight SEC teams playing for the national title, and half the field this year's SEC team. So, had in Texas, and they just got Schlossnagle, so they're going to be good. And Oklahoma's rising, so SEC baseball just got even deeper than it already was.
Well, we'll have to see how those 2 programs come into the league. But what do we got? 58, 57 days until college football gets going in the SEC, particularly for Mississippi State. We've talked about it a couple of different times on the program. We've talked about a couple of different specific topics on the program. You can hear those on our previous editions on the Joe Gaither Show on Cowbell Country, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon. Make sure you're following Jacob Bain on the Twitter machine at Jacob Bain Tim. Jacob, let's talk some football. Let's talk the defensive side of the ball. Lots and lots of question marks on the defensive side of the ball after hiring Coleman Hutzler to be the defensive coordinator. Let's just start big picture. The biggest question mark for Mississippi State's defense is what?
Secondary. I would have to say secondary. And it's not necessarily due to a lack of talent. I think looking at the roster or looking at the DBs, they have some talent. I'm sure we'll get to some of the guys, but there's Isaac Smith, Kelly Jones, Bryce Pollock. All those guys were highly recruited guys. So I wouldn't say it's really a talent issue as much as it is an experience issue, because there's talented guys in the secondary, but they just haven't played. So you can't really say that so-and-so is going to be good if you've never seen them on a college field. And defensive line's a close second, but I would definitely say secondary over defensive line.
All right. Well, I didn't try to get you to say secondary because we were talking secondary today. I'm assuming you just you came to that conclusion in your own research.
Oh yeah, secondaries. I think it's just all fan bases and everybody in this fan base knows the secondary is definitely a worry, because last year they weren't great and they lost a few guys off last year's team. So, but yeah, secondaries. I didn't mean to do anything, but secondary is probably the biggest issue I can think of with State. Defensive lines also, we can talk about that another day.
All right, we'll earmark a defensive line to talk about next week just to answer some of those questions. But in the secondary, you've got, I mean, look, it's a brand new coaching staff pretty much everywhere outside of Chad Bumpus. You've got on the defensive side of the ball Matt Barnes and Corey Bell. Obviously, Coleman Hutzler is the lead coach as the defensive coordinator, but Matt Barnes as co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach kind of strikes me as a little bit of an interesting hire because of his previous role. He was the Memphis defensive coordinator last season. What do we know about these coaches? Because I'm reading 3-3-5 scheme. I'm reading 4-2-5. Coleman Hutzler at Alabama was under the 3-4 Nick Saban scheme. What do you think? And there's no wrong answer. What did you see out of the spring game? What do you think that the scheme is going to look like this fall, particularly as it pertains to the defensive backs?
I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be just one set in stone scheme all year. I think it's going to be. Every coach likes to say it, but I think there'll be multiple. I think they'll do a lot of different things. In particular, the secondary. I think if they do 5, 4-2-5, 3-5. I think there's 5 guys in the secondary who could play. I'm not sure what they'll do. Defensive line, like I mentioned, it's a little bit of an issue. They might want to go 3 down linemen just to disguise they lack depth a little bit, but I'm not sure what this game will be. In the spring game, like I said, it was multiple, and but yeah, Matt Barnes is an interesting. I think he worked at Ohio State before Memphis as well, and so he's got a lot of experience. But I couldn't tell you, and we haven't talked to any of the assistant coaches during spring, so I couldn't tell you too much about either one of them.
All right, so we're going to have to get to know those guys in fall camp when you guys get going towards the end of the month. But, yeah, Matt Barnes has come from Ohio State and Memphis. He was at Ohio State from 2019 to 2021, and then Memphis from 2022 and 23. So now he's with Mississippi State. With the cornerbacks, another interesting hire, and you just talked about experience. I don't know. I mean, look, this guy has a long resume, but a lot of it is in the background. Corey Bell has come from Florida Atlantic as the defensive passing games coordinator. Previously, he was FIU's cornerbacks and recruiting coordinator. He was director of player personnel at Florida. So he's done a bit of everything. He's got a long resume coaching defensive backs, but not really recently, in my opinion. Not really recently. What do we know about Corey Bell? What do you know about Corey Bell?
I don't know too much about him. I know he's obviously got a long resume. I think one of the reasons I think a lot of coaches do this with assistant coaches as well is they hire the guys who have good connections to other states and recruiting. So I think he's a big Florida guy. He lives in Florida. I think his family still lives in Florida. So I think that's one of the main reasons they got him, because Florida, in particular South Florida, is loaded with talent. And so I think that's the reason they hired him as the defensive back coach, kind of get the connections in Florida and Georgia. And it's paid off in the secondary because I think 4 of their defensive back commits are either from Florida or Georgia. So I think that's the reason they went with him.
All right, so let's talk about the first name that pops off my page when I'm looking at Mississippi State's depth chart in the back end, and that's Bryce Pollock. Bryce Pollock got thrown in there last year, 11 games, made 3 starts, but he was a true freshman. What did you see out of Bryce? 6'1" cornerback. What did you see out of Bryce Pollock, and how do you think his sophomore season? How do you think he'll be able to take a step forward for his sophomore season?
I think it speaks volumes if you're a true freshman. You can get on the field in the SEC, especially at cornerback. And my philosophy with cornerbacks is if you don't really notice them during games, they're probably doing a pretty good job. So I never really noticed him during games. I think it's he was a pretty highly recruited guy. If I'm not mistaken, maybe State flipped him from Cincinnati late in the process, but I think if State's going to be good in the secondary, I think he needs to be a part of it, one of the corners, and I think he's 6'1", so I would expect a sophomore year jump, especially if he played his first year, which means a lot for me anyway. So I think if State secondary wants to be good, I think Bryce Pollock needs to take over one of the starting roles.
And on the other side, the other expected, now obviously all of this can change. We're here in July. All of this can change. But the other expected defensive back that I'm seeing as a cornerback, starting cornerback, is Brylan Lanier. And that's a name that people in Tuscaloosa are pretty familiar with, as he spent time here in Alabama. He's bounced all around, but he's coming in from East Mississippi Community College. What do you know about Brylan Lanier, and what do you expect out of him this season?
He flew under the radar. State's got a couple of East Mississippi guys. They got 3 East Mississippi guys. I think they got another safety, Tyler Woodard, a linebacker, and a defensive lineman. I think Brian Lanier kind of flew under the radar. If I'm not mistaken, he had pretty big offers coming out of East Mississippi. He was late getting in the class, so if he's a projected starter, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he was starting. He's talented. I saw him in the spring game. He looked pretty good. He might fit in more as a safety. I think another cornerback to watch would be Kelly Jones. But Brian Lanier will definitely be interesting. I think he had a really good year at East Mississippi. They're a powerhouse in Mississippi, obviously. Went to the national championship, and it was a good late pickup for State because they needed depth in the secondary.
All right, the last guy I want to ask you about, and then I'll ask you to highlight anybody that we've missed, is safety Isaac Smith. Injured last season, didn't really get to play a whole lot, but very highly touted recruit in the 2023 signing class. What do we know about Isaac Smith, and can he get on the field, overcome his injuries, and get on the field for his sophomore season?
I think that's the hope for this coach. I think that's the hope for the coaching staff. He's a guy that's really talented. He's from Fulton, Mississippi. It's about an hour and 15 north of Starkville. And I watched him play because I'm from that area. I watched him play as a sophomore in high school, and he was playing running back, and you could just tell early that he had that X factor about him, especially just running the ball on defense. But I think there's one chance for a guy in the secondary that I could think of that could be a real star this upcoming year would be Isaac Smith. If he can stay healthy, he's a big frame guy, so I think he would play more of either a box safety, or they might put him at free safety and let him roam the field a little bit. But he's a big body guy, and he gets the ball in his hands. He's dangerous, and he was that highly recruited for a reason. So if there's a chance for a guy to be a superstar in the secondary, it would be Isaac Smith.
All right, we're going to file that away. Isaac Smith, superstar potential. All right, there's a lot of other guys in the secondary that I didn't mention and I didn't specifically ask you about. So I'll open it up to my man Jacob Bain covering Mississippi State for Mississippi State on SI. I'm seeing Corey Ellington, Chris Keys Jr., Hunter Washington. I'm seeing Jordan Morant, Tyler Woodard. So you take it away. Who's one of your maybe your pick for the next guy that, okay, we SEC fans need to be watching out for this defensive back?
I would say Kelly Jones. He's from Clarksdale. He was a 4-star. I think he was in the same class as Isaac Smith, and he's just a big body guy. And State really has success with cornerbacks that are pretty big frame, notably Martin Emerson. And Kelly Jones, I think, is probably about 6'4", probably 180 pounds. And they released a video on Twitter the other day, and they got a program on their Levy called Fast as Hell, HAIL. And they did like a little race to see who's the fastest on the team, and Kelly Jones finished first. So if a DB is that fast and he's long, he's athletic, and in the spring game he looked well there. Might need to beef up a little bit, but he is still young, so that's the guy that people definitely need to watch out for is Kelly Jones. I like his length, his size, his speed, and he was obviously a talented guy coming out of high school.
We love the fast guys. And so, speed is the one thing you can't really, really train and teach. So going to have to be watching out for Kelly Jones. All right, Jacob, NCAA football coming out, this month, 2 weeks away or so. Are you going to be overtaking Mississippi State Dynasty, or are there other programs first up on your list to reclaim and build up?
I think I think it's kind of like a meme now that everybody wants to go to a smaller school. So I think I'm going to go to a smaller school to start off with. I'm kind of leaning toward App State just because I like their uniforms, like their stadium, or Kennesaw State. I like their uniforms and I like their stadium as well. But eventually I'll end up in Starkville. I got to build up App State before I go anywhere else. So.
Yeah, got to get your coaching resume up before you overtake Jeff Levy. Oh man, what's your favorite 4th of July food? What are you going to be indulging in on Thursday?
Favorite 4th of July food? I don't know. Ribs, Iraqi ribs. When Iraqi ribs would be good. and I guess the traditional burger, hot dog, rack of ribs, homemade ice cream is something else that's pretty big. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I can't believe it's this week.
Well, I'm coming to your house if you're serving up rack of ribs. I'll be over there, and we'll catch up with you next week, okay, Jacob? Make sure you read Jacob Bain at Mississippi State on SI each and every week, doing great work covering the Bulldogs. Jacob, what's one thing that you might be working on this week before, oh my gosh, SEC Media Day is coming up very, very soon?
I'm kind of running low on content these days. I'm just trying to stay on top of baseball. I did a baseball column yesterday, and football. I don't know, maybe do something about Blake Shapen and Levy's offense. Just kind of because he's got a lot of film on him, so I feel like it'd be good. And because I feel like Blake, we didn't get to talk to him in the spring, none. So I feel like he's kind of an unknown, Blake Shapen, right now.
Okay, well, you can help me as we get out of here because I'm going to be going to Dallas, and we'll be having an episode of the Joe Gaither Show on Cowbell Country out there in Dallas. Obviously, Jeff Levy is he's going to be there. Have they announced who they're bringing or which players they're bringing, or and if they have not, who do you think that they will bring?
They have not announced, and I could not. I would assume Shapen would go just because he's kind of a veteran. He's their quarterback, and maybe DeMonte Russell. He's kind of an older guy. He's been through 3 head coaches now, so I think maybe he could go. Blake Shapen, DeMonte Russell, and man, I couldn't tell you a third one unless it's they might be a transfer. Could be Michaelan Pounders or John Lewis. I couldn't tell you. They haven't announced it. I would imagine they announced it sometime pretty soon though.
Right. They're going to announce it fairly soon so we can all get prepared. And I'm going to lean on you to help me come up with some good questions for these guys. I appreciate your time, Jacob. Enjoy your 4th of July ribs. Get your fingers ready for college football, EA Sports College Football 25, and we'll catch up with you next week. That's Jacob Bain joining us right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Cowbell Country, and we appreciate him hanging out. Yeah, it's the summer month, so a little bit slower time. We decided to do a deep dive on the secondary today, as it's a big area of question mark. Next week, we'll likely talk about the defensive line. As he said, that's their second big question mark, and we'll keep you counting down to Mississippi State football, Jeff Levy's year number 1, right here on Cowbell Country. We appreciate everybody checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We appreciate everybody who is following us at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and really all the social media platforms. It's at Joe Gaither 6. We'll be back for another episode of the Joe Gaither Show on Cowbell Country, Mississippi State on SI, right here next week.